think we might be going, Liz, but hang tight. It says setting up your meeting for Facebook Live.
Its meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. We're live.
Are we?
What it says. Clearly, we're trying out some new technology, so bear with us as we do this.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, it's Val Vandervoort of Veritas Homes.
And Liz Min, good morning.
So it's interesting this week, the county has said that we are considered essential services, real estate, that is. But it is interesting, there is a confusion and lack of clarity about what that means. What we hope is that everyone, both agents and consumers, understand that this is definitely not business as usual.
The order says that you may only show in person if the virtual tour and pictures are not sufficient. So, and owner-occupied houses are not to be shown at all. Those are totally off the table.
Yeah, I can't even imagine if you were, I mean, everyone has different circumstances, so it's tough to be judgmental, but man, if you were needing or wanting to sell right now and you were living in the house, like I certainly wouldn't want people coming in my house.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just for all parties.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So what we've seen come into play around showings, there's some new things that are developing out there, and obviously these are for vacant houses. So California Association of Realtors has developed an addendum or document advisory about what it means to see a house or have your house shown during the COVID-19 outbreak. It's a good advisory to both buyers and sellers as far as just what they should be aware
of. So one of the things is that only 2 buyers are allowed on the premises at the same time, and they have to be from the same household. Obviously, the agent has to be there, but you also need to maintain the 6 feet distancing from everyone and follow the CDC guidelines for distancing.
One of the things I thought was interesting is that the California Association of Realtors is advising that no brochures be at the property. And I think about, I mean, essentially every piece, there should be no paperwork, nothing that a buyer or an agent would be taking with them from the property or looking at, like as far as typically having property inspection reports in a binder at the property. Like, to me, that practice is done for the time being. Obviously, all those documents are digital anyway.
We have had over the last year or two people who say, "Oh, no, I don't need a brochure. It's all online." More and more people don't want the paper. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand that it was time for that anyway.
Yeah, and I see some of these things I think are definitely there's going to be a fast evolving of practices in our industry that I think may go away, and this brochures may go away because I think people are going to be a little timid for a long period of time, even after shelter in place is over.
Yeah. So a couple of things, they're recommending that the disclosures be read before you go to the property, which is something we always frowned upon in the past because we didn't want people to get talked out of something, when it was stuff that was not that much of a challenge, or there were easy solutions to things. And it also upped the number of disclosures that went out. So it was kind of deceptive on the level of interest for things. So I was always like, let's go see the property first, see if you really have an interest, and then read the disclosures, just to keep from making the market more frothy. But and the other thing is making sure that the pre-approval and proof of funds goes to the listing agent before any showings are done.
Some other things that we're seeing get posted out there is that only 1 showing per 24-hour period, which seems realistic, kind of given that, looky-loos are really no longer in the mix, and only buyers who have a serious need to move at this time seem to be the ones out seeing it. And because they're jumping through these other hoops first, like limiting to 1 showing per 24-hour period does not seem unrealistic.
Yeah.
The other thing I think about is interior doors being left open by the listing agent, and a note saying, don't close these doors, closet doors, linen closets, things like that should be left open, or maybe even kitchen cabinets being left open. The things will look a little different, but
I know,
probably wise.
Yeah.
Maybe not a door.
Maybe a sample door or 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So agents are leaving hand sanitizer and gloves at the property, but obviously those are hard to come by these days. So I don't know how long that will really last. I would think a lot of agents will be bringing that with them.
Yeah.
Counting on the listing agent to leave stuff.
I haven't noticed, is a hand sanitizer hitting the shelves again, or at least rubbing alcohol of a high percentage?
I have not been to the store, so I do not.
Yeah. So, we typically talk about numbers in this broadcast, but that obviously is changing some right now, but still some interesting data points to look at. So last week, we were seeing the inventory had generally dropped from the week prior, and this week it has generally gone up in the cities that we track. In the beginning of the shelter in place edict, it seemed nothing was really new was going on in the MLS. I think we're all just kind of stopped in our tracks, and things that maybe were in the pipeline to go were not going. And you also then saw some things that buyers had seen before shelter in place going into effect, that those things were going pending. This week, it may be that it's going up because, one, I think people kind of, now that it's not, our shelter in place is not ending on April 7th, like we thought it might be. And that real estate has been deemed an essential activity, that listings that were in the pipeline that are not owner occupied are coming to the market.
Well, and a lot of those, I spoke to an agent yesterday who said the property there's nobody been in the property since February. We had, all of the pictures were taken, the home was staged, it was clean, it was ready to go. So they were just waiting until people could see it. And, I think there's a lot of situations like that where the home is just sitting.
Yeah. And actually, let me rewind a little bit. One of the things that is definitely evolving in the world of real estate, and I think is probably going to be a change that we're likely to see stick around, is that more digital imaging of properties. I think this is a little bit of old news to Liz and I, because there's been so much conversation about it in the past 2 weeks or so. But I think it is an important thing for everyone to be aware of, is that I think listing agents are doing a lot more work towards creating digital imaging of their properties. We have a listing that's getting ready to come on. I was videoing the closet that wraps around the staircase, because those are things that you would never capture in your typical photographs of a property. But these are in the garage. These are things that I would like the buyer to be able to see without having to go to the property. There's a lot that can be completed that way.
Yeah. We were on a webinar yesterday about how easy it can be, to do a lot of that walking through.
Yeah. And Zillow, it was a webinar about Zillow's 3D homes, and they essentially have an app where you can create an almost Matterport-like tour of the house by yourself with your iPhone. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So days on market really isn't a thing right now, because the MLS has suspended counting up those days, which is not to say, of course, you can't tell when something went on the market, but it seems less important now as well. They froze the counter, but kind of at the beginning of this shelter in place order.
Yep. And we've always liked to track absorption. That is the number of properties that list in a time period versus the number that sell in a time period. We typically look at that, like how many listed in the last week and how many sold in the last week. And that's been something that I've been super curious about during this time, as far as, okay, what is actually moving and happening. So in San Carlos, we've had 1 list and 0 sell. And I'm taking out ones that show up as just sold, meaning essentially that they sold off market. So in San Carlos, we just had 1 list, 0 went pending this week.
San Mateo County had 52 listed and 28 went pending.
And then the cities that we track specifically on the Mid-Peninsula, we had 23 lists and 13 go pending. So that is a market that I would say is moving reasonably well.
Yeah, just not the numbers we hope to see in the spring market, obviously. But
yeah, for sure. But we are doing our part to shelter in place.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, we hope this worked. We'll see what it looks like in the end, but this is kind of cool to be able to use Zoom and Liz and I co-host and then broadcast to Facebook Live. Better than me holding up
I know.
the camera that we've done in the past. Our skills are evolving. All right, everyone, have a great weekend. See if you can tell your weekend from your weekdays. I think it's tough, especially when kids are on spring break.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Be well.
Here.